Hey guys, in this video we're going to be doing an in-depth comparison of 4 compact cameras. Like most of our gear reviews, this is an actual honest desire to determine which of these 4 compact cameras are going to work best for us and hopefully you. Something I'm always preaching on the channel is to always have a camera with you, especially if you have kids or pets or just want to document your own existence or the existence of those that are close to you. Having a camera with you always is absolutely the first step in that process. Of course, most of us have a camera in our pocket all the time. It's called a smartphone, and that's fine for most people, but I personally prefer something with a larger sensor and lens and with more professional features like dynamic range and higher image quality. So for the last 2 weeks, Danae and I have been shooting with these 4 compact cameras with a goal to determine which is the best. And the 4 cameras we're looking at today are generally considered to be the top compact cameras on the market. I realize that there are other compact cameras out there, but these are the top sellers in more of the professional and prosumer markets, and I had to draw the line somewhere. I'll be comparing them in some detail, and I'll try to be as unbiased as I can. For those who want to know what I enjoyed using the most, I'll share that with you at the very end of the video. The first camera is one that has developed a sort of cult following, and I know many of you love it. It's the Ricoh GR III. Next we have the Sony RX100 VII. Then we have Canon's version of that camera, pretty much. At least their answer to it. It's the G5X Mark II. And finally we have the Panasonic LUMIX LX100 Mark II. So that's what we've got. Let the compact camera combat commence. The first consideration is price. We find that 3 of these are within striking distance of each other, with the Ricoh GR III representing the most affordable option by a slim margin over the GFX II. The RX100 VII is quite a bit more, and that's not a huge surprise considering all the bells and whistles that go along with this one, and considering that Sony has long led the R&D charge with the RX100 compact series, with compact manufacturers constantly trying to keep up with them. But still, that $300 edition is quite the leap. I think you'd have to really be taken with this camera over the others to swallow that price differential. But I also think those prices do reflect build quality. When we look at the build quality of the RX100 Mark VII and the LUMIX 100 also Mark II, we generally see more metal involved, whereas we seem to see more plastic involved in the Ricoh GR III certainly, and maybe a bit more than the other two with the G5X II. And while this isn't the long-term study, the Ricoh GR III definitely to me feels the most fragile, with the LX100 Mark II feeling like it could take more of a beating for what that's worth. Now, as I said, the basic requirement here is that each of these cameras is pocketable, or something that you could have on you at all times. And here's where the Ricoh III definitely wins handily. Being the slimmest and lightest, it can remain in your pocket all day and be the least intrusive. The Sony RX100 VII is next. Other than the lens, it's actually quite small. If they wouldn't have gone with such a massive zoom range, it'd probably be even more comparable to the Ricoh GR III in width, but it's still extremely slim and slides in the pocket quite well since it's all metal. The G5X II does manage to be pocketable, but it does have that rubbery grip and it's not as smooth, and so it doesn't go in and out quite as smoothly as some of the other cameras. Finally, with the LUMIX LX100 II, it is pocketable. It's definitely pushing it though. If you wear tight or skinny jeans, it's definitely not gonna work for you. But if you're really stylish like me and you wear cargo shorts, then it's gonna work great. But this is one camera out of the 4 that does have to have a lens cover when it goes in your pocket. You'll want that to protect it. But the problem there, in addition to it just being more fiddly when you want speed, is that you can't truly operate this one-handed like you can with the others. And speaking of speed, let's talk about startup time. No surprise here that the Ricoh GR III, as a responsive street shooting device, wins it with a lightning fast startup time of a half a second. The G5X Mark II takes about a second. The RX100 VII takes a bit more than a second, and the lumbering LUMIX LX100 II takes almost 2 seconds to start up. When it comes to grip and handling, of course, none of these are substantial. They're made for compactness, not necessarily comfort. The RX100 VII is a great example. There is little to no effort made at ergonomics on this guy. There isn't a whole lot of substantial grip on this side. There's the least amount of width here, and nothing on the front used to help you grab hold of it. There's a little bit on the back of rubber, but it's not very substantial, and you do run the risk of dropping this more than with any of the others. The Ricoh GR III has a substantial grip, more so than any of the others, but the thing I don't like about it is that it forces your fingers into the lens a little bit. There isn't that gap there. Like there is with the Canon G5X Mark II, you have more room for your fingers to just be without hitting that lens. And it's nice and rubbery, and also has a nice grip on the back too. By far, it's my favorite of the four. However, the LX100 Mark II is pretty good also. When it comes to shooting experience, I tend to like a really good EVF, and the LX100 II definitely has the largest EVF, which makes it much more pleasant of a shooting experience. But on the other hand, it also protrudes from the body quite a bit, making it a little bit more difficult to make it pocketable and compact. I don't mind using the RX100 VII's little pop-up EVF. It's nice and bright and works great. I feel like they balance the need for pocketability with the goal of allowing EVF shooting. The only thing I wish it would do is automatically switch on when you turn the camera on, or at least have the option to do so, so it's not a two-step process to begin shooting at eye level like it is now. The G5X II has a similar pop-up viewfinder. The only difference here is that this one has to be pulled out, so it's a two-step process. This is fiddly, especially when you're in a hurry. It's an extra step to pull that out, but that's not the worst part here. The worst part is that it doesn't take very much pressure before this begins to push in, and as soon as it even moves a little bit, it'll switch to the LCD. And that's a pain because there's been many times where I've had it on my eye, given it a little bit of pressure, and then lost what I was seeing. I've definitely lost shots in the last couple weeks due to that poor design. I know it's the old Sony design. This isn't, I think that Canon is buying this technology from Sony. So hopefully we'll see that upgraded in future versions of this camera. The Ricoh GR III, of course, has no built-in EVF. They do make one that gives you the frame lines, but it's not the same as having a built-in EVF. And I haven't tried that, so I can't speak to it too much. But the problem here for me is that I live in an area where it's really bright outside almost all year round. When I'm photographing the family outside, say if we're mountain biking or hiking, the LCD is really hard to use and see, especially since there's no articulation to it. The need for an EVF is great for me in the situations. For travel, if you're going to find yourself in bright or tropical areas, this is something you need to consider. When it comes to LCDs, I find that only one of them isn't really up to par. The LX100 Mark II's little LCD screen doesn't articulate, which doesn't bother me too much because mostly I'm using the EVF, but it's just not very good quality. The blacks they look crushed and kind of gross, so you get the feeling that your photos are cheap as you're chimping, if you do chimp, so it's better just not to. As far as shooting controls, I definitely feel like the LUMIX LX100 II wins for usability. It has a dedicated numbered aperture ring, which is nice. It has a dedicated number shutter dial. It has a dedicated EV plus and minus dial. And it's highly customizable otherwise with, I want to say, 11 customizable buttons and a customizable ring on the lens. The only weird thing about it, in my opinion, is this strange aspect ratio picker here on the lens. This feels like a feature you change once, if at all. It seems odd to dedicate a hardware location to that feature alone, to me. And while it doesn't have that same dedicated dials for pleasant Fuji-esque shooting experience like the LX100, the G5X II does have a nice plus and minus EV dial, which is really nice to have when you shoot aperture priority with smart ISO for documentary photography like I do. I feel like having at least that dedicated dial would have helped the shooting experience of both the Ricoh GR III and the Sony RX100 VII, but I recognize also that not everyone shoots that way, so maybe that's just me. The Ricoh GR III has this little lever style dial but it feels so cheap and plasticky. I just hate it. I also find that I'm constantly accidentally pressing it and bringing up the image control menu. I've heard these cameras are totally customizable, and if I were doing a long-term review of this, I'm sure I'd mess with that a lot. And I think you really have to, if you're going to invest in this, you'll need to spend a lot of time figuring out how to get this configured in a way that it works best for you, including how you set up things like snap focus and just exposure settings in general. As far as usability, the RX100 VII probably loses here. There are a lot less dials to work with and to customize, and you do feel more reliant on the LCD to change settings. It's not wonderful. Next, I want to talk a bit about both autofocus and focus controls with these cameras, but I think it's worth pointing out that there is a lot of variation here, and it depends hugely on your style of focusing, but I'll try to cover it well enough to hit most of your needs. When it comes to autofocus in general, the RX100 VII mops the floor with the other cameras in this department. None of them will be able to achieve what it can with those 357 phase detection points and that animal and human face detection technology. Canon certainly has the capability, but the G5X II does not have phase detection auto points, causing it to rely on contrast detect only, like the LUMIX LX100 II. Having said that, all three of those cameras got the job done. They focused well enough for my needs in the test. The only one that struggled was the Ricoh GR III. I missed an incredible amount of shots waiting for this thing to autofocus, especially in low light. Our home isn't bright and I shoot plenty at night also. That might be the Achilles heel of this device. I'm not really sure if I'm doing something wrong or if this was just not intended for people who rely on autofocus. I'm not really sure, but it's surprising since this sensor does incorporate phase detection, unlike Canon and Lumix. But I think most people who use this camera do so on the street. They utilize snap focus capability and they shoot in a style which incorporates hyperfocal distance. They don't rely on the autofocus as much, or at least that's my assumption. And if you like that idea, you might enjoy this camera a lot more than the others. But for those who do a lot of photography with pets and kids, and who appreciate a responsive autofocus, especially with face detection, the RX100 Mark VII will be the most appealing to you. But often I actually prefer to use the focus points and turn off the automatic face detection, especially while using the EVF. And in that department, both the Canon G5X II and the LUMIX LX100 II are really great, since you can use the touch and drag focus feature. That's where you can, while you're holding the viewfinder up to your eye, you can drag the focus point around the screen just on the side like a joystick, and it's all relative. That works really well, and I really love it on these devices. It's highly responsive. The only time it doesn't work well is when you're shooting vertical, where your nose interferes with it and kind of messes it all up. But this is my favorite style of shooting personally, and unless I just haven't stumbled upon that menu item that allows it within the RX100 VII, then this doesn't have it. And of course, the Ricoh GR III, again, doesn't have an EVF, so. Getting into sensor and image quality, this is a mixed bag. It's hard to go apples and apples when you have different sizes of sensors and different types of lenses, but I'll do my best to help you navigate those waters. Let's first get the lay of the land by comparing the sensor sizes. As we've already mentioned, the Ricoh GR III has the largest sensor with that 24 megapixel APS-C sensor. The LUMIX LX100 II is next largest with that micro four thirds sensor, however it has fewer pixels than the others with only 17 megapixels. The Canon G5X II and the Sony RX100 VII both utilize a smaller 1-inch 20 megapixel backside illuminated sensor. When it comes to the lenses, I'll just let you pause the video if you want to go through them side by side. I don't really want to read the specs back to you. There's a lot of variety here. If I had to say which of these cameras is capable of producing the highest detail, sharpness, dynamic range, etc., I'm going to say that based on my limited testing, the Ricoh GR III wins it here. It has the highest megapixel count and the largest sensor. That's generally going to give it the best dynamic range and the most data to work with in post. And with that 28mm equivalent 2.8 aperture prime lens, it's no surprise that it provides the sharpest picture. The center is dead sharp all across the aperture range, and for documentary style photography where the corners are never going to be as important, it's still serviceable wide open. Regarding these other lenses, there's nothing here to really write home about. To varying degrees, these zoom lenses choose flexibility over quality. I'd say that the Sony and the Canon are comparable. While the Sony lens provides a crazy flexible zoom range of 24 to 200 millimeters at the cost of a slower aperture, the more modestly zooming 24 to 120 200mm zoom range of the Canon probably is a smidge sharper in general. But man, the LUMIX LX100 II lens was disappointing. It's not horrible at the wide end, even wide open, but zoom in fully and it's pretty bad, especially 2.8, but it never really fully sharpens up. I find that most surprising since it has a more limited zoom range and it's got the Leica co-brand, but it is what it is. When you compare battery life, these are manufacturer ratings as far as how many shots you'll get. I have not tested this personally, just passing on what they're reporting, so take that with a grain of salt. When it comes to close focus or macro work, all of these, except for the Sony RX100 VII, will allow to get really close. The Canon G5X II and the Ricoh GR III both have macro modes, so you can switch into that and that just moves the lens in a bit so you're able to close focus on objects. But don't leave it there or you'll never be able to focus on anything of significant distance and you won't be sure what you did to deserve such a poor treatment from your device. So with that macro mode enabled, the GR III wins as far as reproduction ratio, but the LUMIX LX100 really has a great close focus without having to switch into any kind of macro mode, and it's almost as close as the Ricoh GR III anyway, so that's a really strong advantage there. And while we're here at the close and wide end, let's take a quick peek at the bokeh, because I know that that matters to a lot of you. We are wide open on these shots. And while we're on that subject, let's go ahead and compare how things look at more of a portrait field of view. With the zooms, we'll head out to their furthest reaches for these shots so we can see what sort of compression and depth of field you'll be able to get here. Keep in mind, again, we're shooting wide open on each of these cameras for these shots. Each of these cameras has optical image stabilization, and this can be enormously helpful when you're photographing slow-moving subjects or not moving subjects in low light, allowing you to get away with much sharper images at lower shutter speeds than you would otherwise. I decided to do a quick washing machine image stabilization test to see how each one does. The last feature I want to compare is the continuous burst rate, and there is quite a difference here in capability. It can be nice to use burst when documenting pets and children for a variety of situations, and if that's important to you, the Canon G5X II is going to be the camera for you. But even the LUMIX LX100 at an 11 frames per second is more than plenty for what I usually feel I need. What isn't great here, again, is the Ricoh GR III, which even for street photography, it surprises me that everyone is okay with such a small or such a low frames per second continuous burst. On the streets, I love the grab bursts when a moment is fleeting. There really is no reason not to. I know some people have created these artificial rules that say it's somehow cheating, but isn't the point to secure documentation of events happening around you? I don't know. I don't think it matters how you got that as long as you're authentic and your images are thought-provoking. But I digress. Those are all the features that I wanted to cover though. I realize that there are many, many more features that we could have compared, including video, integrated ND filters, screen articulation, a lot more. I choose to focus on the features that matter the most to those of us looking at devices for their documentary capabilities in their day-to-day lives, so hopefully you found that helpful. And for those of you still listening and who care what I personally think, first off, thank you for sticking around so long. I have to be honest with you though, if I had to choose one of these four, it's not an easy choice even after the weeks of shooting with them nearly nonstop. So let's start by eliminating some of them. I have to eliminate the Sony RX100 VII first off. While there are a lot of features I find compelling about it, there are a few things I hate. While I love that pop-up EVF, I hate the fact that it has no touch and drag focus. Also, the crazy zoom range that forces it to have that really slow aperture is not helpful to me. I shoot almost exclusively wide, and so 200mm zoom range, it's lost on me. For those of you who travel though, you might find that glorious. It's just not right for me. Now, I've heard plenty of you who say the RX100 VII is the one to get, as that's the last model that had that faster aperture lens, but it still has phase detect auto also. But my issue with that camera is that it also has that same pop-up style EVF as the Canon G5X II, where you have to pull it out and you can nudge it and it will stop working. So that's a deal breaker for me for both of those cameras. That's actually the only thing I hate about this. Otherwise, I think I would actually choose this one, but it's really a big deal to me. I know my next camera is going to piss off a lot of die-hard Ricoh GR III fans, but guys, it's a great camera, but it's not great for me. It needs an integrated pop-up EVF, it needs higher continuous burst, and it needs better autofocus, but it's probably the perfect camera for other street photographers, just not me. Finally, we have the LUMIX LX100 II. There's a lot to love about this camera. I love the shooting experience. I wish it were a smidge smaller. I wish that it had the Sony RX100 VII style pop-up EVF to slim it down. I wish that the lens would close down so you don't have to use a lens cap, and really so I could use it fully one-handed. It is pocketable, but only just, and only with the right cargo shorts. And the image quality, I think it could be a little higher. The megapixel count could be a little higher. So where does that leave me? Well, honestly, I'm not ready to jump on any of these. All of these could make some tweaks, and that would make them extremely appealing to us documentary photographer types. Really, all of them are so close, and even Fuji, if they would come out with the Mark II of the X70 that had a pop-up EVF like the RX100 VII, it could be perfect. So we'll just have to wait and see if they do that. For now, maybe though, I'll just have to go back to a film option. But that's all for now, my friends. I hope you found some value or enjoyment out of this one. I'll leave you with a few more photos I took from each of these cameras on rotation. Remember to do some good with your camera where you can, and we'll talk to you again real soon.